The Kingdom of Benin, bronze, blood, and British plunder. What if a single city's walls stretched longer than the Great Wall of China? What if bronze artworks so magnificent, Europe refused to believe Africans made them? What if a kingdom's treasures were stolen at gunpoint, and still sit in foreign museums today? This is the Epic of Benin, only on Mr. Africa. A civilization so advanced, Portuguese explorers compared it to Lisbon. Warriors so fierce, they made British machine guns hesitate. Art so priceless, the world still fights over who owns it. From the divine Obas to the blood-soaked punitive expedition, this is the true story they don't teach you. Subscribe now. African History Unfiltered. Chapter 1. The city before the empire. Deep within the verdant, often challenging rainforest belt of what is now southern Nigeria, a powerful and intricately organized city began its ascent. This was not the modern Republic of Benin, a separate nation entirely, but Edo, the burgeoning spiritual and political capital of the mighty Benin Kingdom. Its origins are steeped in both oral tradition and archaeological evidence, suggesting a foundation as early as the 11th century CE. The kingdom's earliest inhabitants were the Edo, people, a resilient and resourceful ethnic group who established a series of rulers, known as the Ogiso kings of the Sky dynasty, believed to have governed for centuries, forming the early state of Iko. However, a period of internal strife and a perceived tyranny among the later Ogisos led to a crucial turning point. The Edo people, seeking a more just and stable leadership, eventually banished their last Ogiso king. According to revered tradition, they appealed to the powerful neighboring Yoruba kingdom of Ife, a renowned center of spiritual power and, significantly, of advanced sculpture. It was from Ife that Prince Oramiyan, a son of the mythical progenitor of the Yoruba people, Oduduwa, was invited to rule. While Oramiyan eventually returned to Ife, he left behind a son, Uikai, who was widely considered the first Oba of the current dynasty of Benin, establishing a new line of divine rulers around the 13th century CE. This foundational connection between Ife, with its masterful brass and terracotta sculptures, and Benin, would prove pivotal. It not only solidified a unique artistic heritage, but also established a royal tradition infused with deep spiritual legitimacy. Under the early Obus, like Udosi, 1255 to 1280, who asserted royal authority over the powerful Uzama chiefs, and later, the truly transformative reign of Oba Uer, the Great C, 1442-1473. The kingdom would expand dramatically. Uer, a formidable warrior and a visionary reformer, reorganized the army, established a system of hereditary succession, and most significantly, transformed Benin City into a formidable stronghold, protected by vast walls and moats, laying the groundwork for an empire that would captivate the world. Chapter 2. The Oba and the Divine Throne. The Oba of Benin was no ordinary king. His authority was absolute, his influence omnipresent. He was believed to be Yuku Akpalokolo, a divine being, the sacred earthly representative of the gods, specifically of Olokon, the god of the sea, wealth, and fertility. His word was not merely law, it was the very decree of the heavens. His physical presence was considered so sacred that direct eye contact was often forbidden, and he appeared in public only for the most significant ceremonies, adorned in layers of coral beads, a powerful symbol of his connection to Allah. His palace, located at the very heart of Edo Benin City, was not just a royal residence, it was the sprawling epicenter of the kingdom's spiritual, political, and cultural life. Chronicled by European visitors as early as the 16th century, the palace was a vast, meticulously organized complex of courtyards, audience halls, and sacred shrines. Its wooden pillars were often intricately carved, depicting historical events and mythical creatures, while its walls, constructed from burnished red earth, were famously adorned with hundreds, perhaps thousands of gleaming bronze plaques, AMA narrating the royal lineage, commemorating battles, depicting rituals, and illustrating daily court life. These plaques acted as a dynamic, metallic historical archive, a visual testament to the Oba's power and the kingdom's glory. But the city's defenses were as awe-inspiring as its artistry. Chapter 3. Bronze and Brilliance. Nowhere else in Africa, perhaps, nowhere else in the entire pre-industrial world, was bronze and brass casting perfected and utilized with such an astounding combination of detail, emotion, and symbolic power. The iconic Benin Bronzuzo, collective term for thousands of intricate plaques, commemorative heads, animal figures, and ceremonial objects, were not merely decorative. They were the very soul of the kingdom, rendered in metal, depicting a vast panorama of life. Royal ceremonies, victorious battles, Portuguese traders, powerful leopards, symbols of the Oba deities, and court officials. Each piece was a vibrant historical record. The mastery behind these objects lay in the sophisticated lost wax casting technique, Sire Perdue, a complex process that required immense skill, patience, and a deep understanding of metallurgy. First, a detailed model was sculpted in beeswax, capturing every nuance of the intended final piece. This wax model was then coated with successive layers of finely sifted clay, creating a mold. Once dried, the mold was heated, allowing the wax to melt away, leaving a precise cavity. Molten bronze, an alloy primarily of copper and zinc brass, was then poured into this void. After cooling, the clay mold was painstakingly broken away, revealing the metal masterpiece. Each cast was unique, as the mold was destroyed in the process. Benin's guilds of Igbin, eco-royal brass casters, often passed down through hereditary bloodlines and operating under the Oba's direct patronage, guarded their techniques fiercely. Their artistry flourished, particularly during the reigns of Obas like Izagi, early 16th century, who commissioned vast numbers of plaques for the palace. But it wasn't just bronze. Benin also excelled in exquisite ivory carving, transforming elephant tusks into intricate figures and ceremonial horns oliphants, often commissioned for export to European royalty. Coral beads, imported and highly prized, were meticulously crafted into the elaborate royal regalia, signifying the Oba's connection to Olokon. The art of Benin was more than aesthetic. It was propaganda, embodying the Oba's divine right. It was religion, serving in ancestral shrines. And it was living memory, preserving the triumphs and traditions of a powerful, ancient kingdom. These dazzling works continue to astound historians and art collectors alike, standing as irrefutable testaments to an advanced African civilization. Chapter 4. Power, Trade, and the Portuguese Enigma. By the mid-15th century, the Kingdom of Benin's power had not merely grown. It had blossomed into a formidable regional hegemon. Its political and military influence stretched across much of the lower Niger River region, controlling vital waterways and extending its reach far into the interior. Consequently, its economic strength was prodigious. Built upon rich agricultural lands, skilled craftsmanship, and strategic control over trade routes. It was this burgeoning economic prowess that propelled Benin to directly engage in high-level, sophisticated trade with the burgeoning maritime powers of Europe. Powers then navigating uncharted waters in search of new wealth. When the first Portuguese explorers, led by João Afonso de Barro, finally arrived at the bustling port of Guato in 1485. They were not met with primitive tribes, as colonial narratives would later vehemently and falsely assert. Instead, they encountered a meticulously organized, technologically advanced, and remarkably sophisticated kingdom. They found a centralized government operating with a complex bureaucracy, a highly disciplined army, and a shrewd, diplomatic elite who negotiated from a position of strength, not subservient. Early Portuguese chroniclers, stripped of their preconceptions, recorded their awe at the scale and order of Benin City. Benin engaged in a robust and mutually beneficial exchange of prized commodities. From its vast rainforest resources, the kingdom offered meticulously sourced high-quality ivory, which was eagerly coveted by European craftsmen to create intricate carvings for nobility and churches. It supplied valuable West African pepper piper ganines, a highly sought-after spice that rivaled Asian pepper in the European market. And, critically, Benin traded finely woven cotton cloth, renowned for its vibrant dyes and superior craftsmanship, which was itself a significant trade item along the West African coast. In return, the Europeans provided essential goods that profoundly strengthened the Obas military and adorned his court. Highly sought-after guns and gunpowder arrived, revolutionizing Benin's warfare, giving the Obas army a technological edge over rivals who still relied on traditional weaponry. Brass and copper manillas bracelet-shaped ingots flowed into the kingdom. These were not mere trinkets, but raw materials, eagerly melted down by Benin's master casters to create the very bronze plaques, heads, and figures we admire today. Beyond these, luxury items like mirrors, prized coral beads, essential for royal regalia, and European textiles further enhanced the splendor of the royal court. This initial era of encounter between Benin and Portugal was marked by a degree of respect and mutual interest. European accounts, often biased but occasionally revealing, expressed genuine amazement. One Portuguese envoy in the late 15th century, possibly Duarte Pacheco Pereira, reportedly described Benin City as large as Lisbon, and all the streets run straight and so far as the eye can see, noting its remarkable cleanliness, impressive urban planning, and the grand architecture of the Oba's palace. The Oba of Benin, a master strategist, maintained strict, centralized control over this vital transoceanic trade. He monopolized all direct contact with Europeans, often restricting their travel inland to prevent direct dealings with other chiefs, or undermining his authority, thereby preserving his supreme power and ensuring all substantial profits flowed directly to the royal treasury. He even sent envoys to Portugal, including a Benin ambassador to the court of King John II in the 1480s, demonstrating his kingdom's diplomatic sophistication and global awareness. This era of early trade brought immense wealth and crucial new technologies to Benin, fundamentally shaping its military might and artistic output. However, it also initiated a slow, insidious shift, a subtle but dangerous change in the relationship. The presence of foreign interests, initially respectful and mutually beneficial, gradually became more aggressive, fueled by the growing European demand for raw materials and the expanding ideology of colonialism. Over the centuries that followed, especially as the demand for enslaved labor eclipsed other commodities, Europeans began watching Benin not just with admiration for its sophistication and wealth, but with an escalating predatory ambition. The stage was being set for a clash that would fundamentally alter the course of Benin's magnificent, yet ultimately tragic, destiny. Chapter 5. Rituals and Blood. While the Kingdom of Benin attained an extraordinary level of sophistication in politics, economics, and art, its very foundation was inextricably woven with a deeply spiritual, and at times, ruthlessly traditional belief system. At the core of Benin cosmology was the belief in a pantheon of deities, with Olokon, god of the sea, wealth, and creativity, and Ogun, god of iron and war, holding particular prominence. However, the most profound spiritual connection was with the ancestors Ihedi, especially the deceased Obas, whose spirits were believed to continue guiding and protecting the kingdom. To maintain this vital link and ensure the Oba's spiritual strength and the kingdom's prosperity, elaborate rituals were central. Among these ceremonies involving animal sacrifices were commonplace, often accompanied by the symbolic offering of blood, believed to cleanse the land, honor the ancestors, and avert misfortune. However, historical accounts, both oral and European, indicate that human sacrifice, particularly of war captives or condemned criminals, also played a significant, albeit controversial, role in certain contexts. These sacrifices were often performed during major annual festivals, such as the Igu Festival, a royal festival focused on strengthening the Oba's spiritual power and honoring royal ancestors, or during critical junctures like times of war or national crisis. The blood was believed to feed the ancestral altars and ensure the continued flow of divine blessing to the Oba and his people. Priests, Owen, diviners, Ibo, and spiritual guides, Izomo, held powerful positions within the political and social hierarchy, advising the Oba on matters ranging from warfare to agricultural cycles. The Oba himself was not just a temporal king, but also the chief priest, bridging the divine and mortal realms, responsible for maintaining cosmic balance. To outsiders, particularly the Victorians, who would later condemn these practices, it was viewed as barbarous. But to Benin's people, within their own complex spiritual framework, these acts were often understood as sacred necessities, vital components of a meticulously observed cosmic order, crucial for the survival and well-being of the collective. Chapter 6. British Greed. By the late 19th century, the British Empire's insatiable appetite for resources and territory in Africa had reached a fever pitch. The infamous scramble for Africa was in full swing. Benin, with its control over rich palm oil resources, timber, and its strategic location, was seen by British colonial officials as an unacceptable obstacle to their burgeoning economic and political ambitions in the Niger Coast Protectorate. The kingdom's refusal to open its interior markets fully to British trading firms, maintaining its traditional royal monopoly on trade, became a convenient and oft-cited excuse for aggression. The tension escalated dramatically. Britain sought to impose a treaty of protection on Oba Ovenramwan Nugbia, who ascended to the throne in 1888. This treaty, if signed, would have effectively ceded Benin's sovereignty to the British crown. The Oba, a shrewd and independent ruler, resisted these overtures. Understanding the true implications of such an agreement, he recognized the British demands as a direct threat to his authority and the kingdom's autonomy. The flashpoint, a manufactured provocation, came in January 1897. James Robert Phillips, the British acting consul general of the Niger Coast Protectorate, decided to lead an unauthorized peace mission to Benin City. This was not a diplomatic visit. It was, as many historians now argue, a reconnaissance mission, deliberately timed during a sacred period when the Oba was undergoing the annual Igu rituals and was forbidden to receive outsiders. Oba Oven Ramwan had explicitly warned Phillips to postpone his visit, citing the sacred nature of the ongoing ceremonies and the potential for unrest. Despite these clear warnings, Phillips, audacious and dismissive of native authority, pressed on with a party of 9 British officials and nearly 250 African porters. What followed was chaos and tragedy. The British party was ambushed by Benin warriors at Ugbin village, near Guato. 7 British officials, including Phillips himself, and nearly 200 of their African porters were killed. While contemporary British accounts framed this as an unprovoked massacre, historical analysis suggests that some Benin chiefs, acting against the Oba's explicit wishes to avoid confrontation during the ritual period, took matters into their own hands, fearing what Phillips' unauthorized intrusion represented. Regardless of the immediate command structure, the ambush provided the British with the precise pretext they sought. In retaliation, Britain unleashed its full, devastating fury, culminating in one of the most infamous acts of colonial aggression in African history. Chapter 7. The Benin Punitive Expedition. The British response was swift, brutal, and meticulously planned. In February 1897, less than a month after the ambush, a formidable British force, numbering over 1,200 troops comprising Royal Marines, sailors, and Niger Coast Protectorate forces, launched what they euphemistically called the Benin Punitive Expedition. This was no mere punitive raid. It was a full-scale military invasion, equipped with the latest devastating military technology, Maxim machine guns, formidable cannons, and a chilling mandate that went beyond simple retaliation. The invasion culminated in the capture of Benin City after fierce, though ultimately uneven, resistance. What followed was an act of systematic destruction and unparalleled cultural vandalism. British troops unleashed fire upon the city, burning down ancient palaces, sacred shrines, and countless residential compounds. The meticulously crafted wooden structures, adorned with generations of art, were reduced to ash. Innocent civilians were killed, caught in the inferno and the indiscriminate violence. And then, the plunder began. In a horrifying, systematic operation, British forces looted thousands upon thousands of priceless bronze and ivory artifacts. These weren't haphazard grabs. They were targeted seizures of the kingdom's entire artistic and historical legacy, commemorative brass heads of former Obus and Queen Mothers, intricate relief plaques detailing centuries of history, powerful leopard figures, ceremonial weapons, and exquisitely carved ivory tusks were ripped from their altars, walls, and shrines. Many were taken by individual officers as war trophies, while the vast majority were systematically collected and later auctioned off in London by the British Admiralty to defray the costs of the expedition itself. The Oba Oven Ramwan Nugbaisi, after initial evasion, was eventually captured, stripped of his royal regalia, paraded ignominiously, and then exiled to Calabar, where he would die in 1914, never to return to his beloved city. The British called it a punitive expedition, a lesson for an uncivilized people. But in reality, it was a cultural massacre, an act of imperial larceny on a scale rarely witnessed. Benin City was torched, its vibrant intellectual and artistic life shattered, its people scattered, traumatized. Its priceless treasures, its very identity, were scattered to museums in London, Berlin, New York, and beyond, becoming centerpieces in foreign collections, often without proper attribution or acknowledgement of their violent acquisition. To this very day, the vast majority of those magnificent bronzes remain in foreign hands, silent witnesses to a historical injustice, despite escalating international calls for their unconditional return. Chapter 8. Benin's enduring legacy. But the spirit of Benin, though scarred, could not be burned out. The royal lineage of the Oba persisted. Today, the Oba of Benin still reigns, currently His Royal Majesty, Oba Ua II, the 40th Oba of the Edo dynasty. He is a revered traditional leader, holding immense spiritual and cultural authority not just in Edo State, but across Nigeria and among the global Edo diaspora. His rebuilt palace continues to uphold centuries-old rituals and ceremonies, a vibrant hub of tradition in a modern world. In Benin City, master artists still cast bronze using the ancient lost wax technique, creating new works that both honor the past and speak to the present. The youth are actively reconnecting with their rich, complex heritage, exploring their history and demanding justice for the plunder. And globally, the call to return the stolen Benin bronzes is growing louder, transforming from a whisper to a roar heard in the halls of power and prestigious institutions. Significant progress has been made. In 2021, Germany announced the restitution of hundreds of Benin bronzes, a groundbreaking move. The University of Aberdeen in Scotland, the Smithsonian National Museum of African Art in Washington, D.C., and the Horniman Museum in London have also begun the process of returning artifacts to Nigeria. However, thousands of these invaluable pieces, estimated to be over 9,000 objects, still remain scattered across more than 160 museums and private collections worldwide, stark souvenirs of imperial theft. The fight for comprehensive repatriation continues, an ongoing struggle for cultural justice and the reassertion of African agency over its own heritage. They burned the city, they exiled the king, they stole 1,000 years of history. But they couldn't kill Benin's spirit. Today, the Obas still reigns. Artists still cast bronze as their ancestors did. And across the world, museums are being forced to return what they stole. But this fight isn't over. Which African queen raised an army that crushed invaders? What golden empire traded with ancient Rome? The next chapter drops soon, only on Mr. Africa. Smash that subscribe button. The truth won't wait forever.